Okay. We're ready? All right. الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. We praise Allah, the Lord of everything in existence, and we ask Him to bless the Messenger Muhammad, to elevate his mention and rank, and to shower him with protection and grace along with his family and his righteous followers, as He did with Ibrahim, his family and righteous followers in the past. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما اللهم اجعل ما تعلمناه حجة لنا لا علينا. We ask you, Allah, to teach us what benefits us and to allow us to benefit from the things that we learn, and to increase us in knowledge. We ask you to make the things that we learn an evidence for us and not an evidence against us. Welcome to another session of prophetic stories, illustrations of life, where we're covering the life and times of the Messenger Muhammad and trying to extract some lessons and practical morals that we can apply in our daily lives. Today's talk is about one of the special and foremost disciples of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and his interaction with the Messenger about a specific personal issue of his. So this is a young man, and typically we said before that many of the Sahaba, many of the disciples of the Messenger were young in age. They were not old people. And that was basically a typical tradition for all the messengers of God, that they attracted younger people. And those younger people eventually would mature and they would carry on the burden of sharing the message. Now, this person also was very much in love with God and His Messenger, and he yearned for doing acts of obedience and coming closer to God and offering service. And he basically was yearning for paradise. So his objective was not necessarily this world. He was all about the life to come. So he was clear on his purpose. But the reality is, we don't live by ourselves. We are social human beings. And we're not just responsible for ourselves, except if we live all by ourselves somewhere out in the desert. But as we're going to learn, this particular story is this individual may have had too much personal piety, and that may have caused certain problems for him in life. And people are usually surprised when they hear things like that. They're like, we thought you're supposed to encourage people to do more righteousness. We're hearing you saying slow down or be under control and don't be out of control. So this particular young man, in his young age, he basically decided to exert all of his energy and all of his power and all of his strength and to strive towards the things that he yearned for, which means God's pleasure and paradise. That's all he wanted to do. Very focus-driven, purpose-driven, or very focused and purpose-driven. And basically he decides to conduct himself in a way where he's constantly engaged in acts of worship and devotion. And he made a particular statement, and we may have heard this in other stories, but this is specific for this particular Sahabi. He says, I am going to stay up at night in night vigil. And this is the night vigil that Muslims conduct, is not after somebody dies, by the way. I know that that's what people think of night vigil. But night vigil is when you stand up in salah. You stand up and you wake up and you desert your bed and the comfort of your sheets, and you start worshiping God. And he also says, I'm never going to eat every single day. I'm going to fast. I'm going to fast according to Islam. The fast of Islam is you basically stop eating at dawn and you continue doing so all the way until sunset. And he made a promise to himself that he's going to do this for his whole life. So I'm not going to go to sleep and I'm not going to eat. Very disciplined individual. Now he starts doing that with full enthusiasm, and basically he used to read the whole Quran in one night. I mean, if you're standing up in salah, if you do an average right now, the night time is about how many hours? Sunset is like 5 o'clock. When is Fajr? About 5 o'clock? 12 hours exactly, right? If you read Quran on a good pace, you can finish the whole Quran in 12 hours. Because basically they would do a juz every 20 minutes. So every hour you have 3 ajza. So in 10 hours, you can actually finish the whole Quran. And this is what he was doing. I mean, he had the strength and the energy. Again, we're not talking about somebody leading people in salah. We already said that, right, in Ramadan. We said the imams have to be considerate of the people behind them. So instead of people praying, they don't curse them. Instead of saying, oh Allah, have mercy on our imam, they don't say, God damn this imam. Right? You wanna be gentle with the imams. Or with the people that are behind you. So what happens is his father, this young man's father, goes and selects a fine young lady for him from the community, from Quraysh. So he's from the Meccan people, and she has a great lineage, meaning she comes from a good family, and she's an extremely intelligent young lady, and they get married. When they bring her to him, he decides to refrain from having any type of relations with her. This is on his wedding night. Now the wedding, typically people are all excited and yeah, we're going to celebrate. This guy is checked out completely. Again, we said his mind is somewhere else. His mind is not in this material life. He's not thinking about the spouses of this life. He's thinking about spouses, eternal spouses in the life to come. And again, we said he's preoccupied with his acts of worship. So the father comes now to check on his daughter-in-law. Of course, I don't like this word in-law, by the way. In Islam, we don't have in-laws, right? He's checking on his wife, on his son's wife. I like that better. Whenever you put the law in, people typically don't have a very good relationship with the law. So it's something cringeworthy. In Arabic, you say sihr. Sihr is basically your relations that are built on marriage. It has nothing to do with the law. It's got to do with this bond that you have through marriage, which is, as described by Allah, أَخَذْنَا مِنْكُمْ مِيثَاقًا غَلِيظًا. It's a very serious covenant and contract. It's a very heavy burden. So he says, how did you find your husband? He's checking up on her. She's like, he's an amazing man. He never goes to sleep at night, and he never eats in the daytime. Constantly fasting, constantly worshiping. By the way, when we say those people used to stand up at night in night vigil, they didn't sleep in the daytime either, by the way. Like those people, they take power naps. So they didn't sleep. We're not talking about somebody stays up at night and then sleeps the whole day. That's what we typically do if we have like, we're binge watching something, right? We stay up all night, 12 hours, not in qiyam, not a night vigil, in Netflix vigil. Right? We're just binge watching. We'll watch one episode after the other. We watch one season after the other. 12 hours, mashallah, we did the khatma of what? We did the khatma of a show on Netflix. Right? So it's a different world we're talking about. Anyway, so he's not sleeping, he's not resting, meaning he's not coming to bed, he's not having relations with her. And she says, he hasn't even seen me yet. لَمْ يَكْشِفْ لَنَا سِتْرًا. I haven't exposed myself to him. He's like, basically, he's in his own world, and I'm just here visiting. And she says, he didn't even come close to bed since I've been married. He didn't even approach the bed. Again, you may think, what kind of crazy young man is this? What was this guy doing, right? Of course, when you look at young people now, they plan for marriage, the day of the wedding, and everybody's talking about it. This guy, again, was in a different dimension. So the father's name is Amr. Amr ibn al-As, a very famous person. He becomes enraged and angry. And he wasn't happy with his son for doing that because he went out of his way to find him a suitable wife. So he went and he was very tough on his son. And he says, I got you a sister, I got you a Muslim woman that comes from a good family. And all you're doing is basically just not having any interaction with her. This is a crime. And again, this is very interesting because most people think that, that's it. You get married and that means there's no rights, no mutual rights and responsibilities. Many of us, we just demand our rights, but we don't give rights to the other side. Any relationship in Islam is composed of give and take. You have certain rights and you have certain responsibilities. You got to treat the other person kindly. You can't just say, well, okay, we're married and that's it. It's not a death sentence. I always bring this up because many people think once we're in marriage, we're stuck. And they take advantage of the other side. They're like, basically, whatever they want to do, they control them. And that's not something that Islam teaches. So Abdullah, the son, so his name is Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As. This is a very interesting Sahabi, by the way. And he became Muslim way before his father. So Amr ibn al-As becomes Muslim in the late days of the Messenger's ministry, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But Abdullah had been Muslim for a while, and in fact, not only was he a Muslim, as far as hadith reports are concerned, Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, during the time of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, under his instruction, the Messenger told him, record my statements down. You know, many people think hadith came about later on. But hadith, just like the Quran, was recorded, hand documented, during the time of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this was one of the individuals that were tasked with that. But this is not our story today. I'm not going to tell you about him being a scholar or him being extremely close to the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This man didn't even get bothered by whatever his father just told him. Again, he's in a different dimension. And the thing is, he felt, you know what, I have the strength, I have the energy, I have the stamina to continue doing this. And not only was he doing this, by the way, whenever, this is what people also don't understand, is when folks get involved in worship and devotion, they're not doing it because it's a chore anymore. Especially when they're dedicated. They actually enjoy it. Like, many of us don't even know that, but there's people in our community that stand up at night when no one is watching them, and they're having a blast. They're worshiping God, and they're praying to Him, and they're crying, and they're on a spiritual high. So this man is receiving these things. He's feeling like, I don't care what anybody's telling me. I know what I'm feeling. Like, you can't basically argue with that. He's like, my dad is telling me, pay attention to your wife. My wife wants me to pay attention to her. I'm not going to give up this pleasure. So again, many people think, well, how can that pleasure be more than intimacy? Well, because there is so many types of pleasure in this world. It's not limited to one thing, right? And sometimes certain people, their pleasure of doing worship is better than the most extreme form of, you know, climax in intimate pleasure. They have more of that through worship and devotion. Now, when this thing continued, the father gets upset. He's like, my son is not giving me any attention. So who does he go to? The Messenger of Allah, right? Immediately, he goes to the Messenger of Allah, the teacher, and he places an official complaint against his son. So then the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam goes to Abdullah to his house. Look how amazing this teacher is. He doesn't summon him. Again, the Messenger of God is the leader of the community. He could have said, come to the Messenger of God. No. He goes and walks to the man's house. And again, this is teaching us that whenever we want to share something with someone, possibly correct them, help them to adjust, we got to do it in private. Don't do it in front of everyone. A couple of days ago, we were having a meeting with some Islamic studies teachers in an Islamic school. I don't teach Islamic studies. I teach adult education. Because with little children, I think you lose most of the time just trying to get them in check. Like sit down, stop talking, pay attention. So I'm not an expert in that particular age group. But what I told the teachers is that I'm sure that some of the students act up, but don't ever humiliate a student in front of their peers, because it will traumatize them and they will hate this experience. So I said, if they act up, make a note of it and then take them to the side one-on-one and speak to them and find out what's going on. You know, many times if we can only do this whenever we see somebody. So again, this is for parents, and I know a lot of you are parents. When we want to correct our children, instead of correcting them in front of others, in front of their siblings or their cousins or their peers, if we do it privately, I think it goes a longer way. Because what ends up happening is they rebel more due to the embarrassment and the humiliation. And that's something that we should not take lightly, because that has a lasting impact in their personality. So we definitely need to try our best to control our emotions. I mean, I know it's very easy to lash out. And I'm sure, like, if there is this kid who's causing trouble in class, it's very easy for this adult teacher to just break him down, right? And unfortunately, a lot of Eastern cultures, they're based on this type of attitude. And it's not just Eastern cultures, by the way. I don't like picking on the East or the West. But like in America, if you're in the military, what do they do in boot camp? They curse you and they curse your parents and they ridicule you and they humiliate you. The point is to break you down. Because once you're broken, now he can control you. Your general, your sergeant can control you. So the same thing, I told the teachers, I said, it's very easy for you because you're older, you're stronger, you can dominate this child and you can put them in check. But you've lost them for eternity. Because they'll always think, this Islamic studies teacher is a monster. I don't even need Islam. Not only did you scare them off from your person, but you scared them off from what you represent. And that's why, I mean, a lot of times we hear people who've basically lost interest in religion. Most of them, it's not about intellectual exercises, by the way. Most of these people, they had traumatizing experiences. Maybe they came to the mosque or the church or the temple, whatever the religion. This is not just a Muslim problem. This is a human problem. They came in and somebody was rude with them. They're like, I'm never coming back again. I don't want to come see faces like this. I want to come and have fun. I want to enjoy myself when I come to these places, right? So again, just for us to be careful with people's emotions. And we said about the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam how emotionally intelligent he was, right? And that's why he's a role model. So he goes and visits this man in his house. And he enters into his own private quarter, his chamber. And Abdullah gives the Messenger of God a pillow made out of, again, whatever material they had. So some fiber inside of it, the filling is fiber, and then like palm tree fiber. And then it's made out of animal skin. And the Messenger of God refused to sit on it. So again, meaning he's not coming here to just like relax. There has to be like something serious. And what Abdullah was doing is a sign of hospitality. You have a guest coming over, you kind of prepare a sitting arrangement for them. And they didn't have furniture at that time, so that's why he's giving them a pillow. Because where did they typically sit? Remember, I said we got to get ourselves out of this environment and remember what the Messenger's life was like. Their floor was dirt. Okay? So now sitting on dirt is what? Is a hard surface. So he gives them a pillow at least to make it a bit softer. So the Messenger did not sit on it. Rather, he sat on the floor, directly on the ground. And then he places basically the pillow is stationed between him and Abdullah. And then the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells him, Ya Abdullah ibn Amr. He asks him by his name. He calls him by his name. He's like, I have been informed. أخبرت أنك تقوم الليل وتصوم النهار. I was informed that you stand up in vigil at night in prayer and worship, and that you are fasting in the days. وأنك تقول لأصومن النهار وأقومن الليل ما عشت. And that you make a proclamation and you say, I will continue to fast the day and I will continue to stand up at night vigil as long as I am alive. So you made a vow. Now the Messenger again is not coming to reprimand him necessarily. First of all, he's trying to verify. Always remember that. No matter what report you receive about people, oh, they said this about you or they did that. Go and verify before you start doing what? Making accusations. And by the way, I've spoken about this before, but most people confuse this. They're like, well, the verse says, إِن جَاءَكُمْ فَاسِقٌ بِنَبَإٍ فَتَبَيَّنُوا. If, the way they translate it, an open sinner comes to you with a message or a report, then verify. Open sinner is the wrong translation of that particular verse. Fasiq has different meanings based on context. Fasiq in that context simply means someone who's outside of the bounds of Sharia. He's non-Sharia compliant in bringing about reports. He's not verifying the reports himself. So whenever someone comes to you, regardless of who they are, if they're not doing their due diligence, so it's not about the person being religious or trustworthy or somebody that you like, none of that matters. You have to verify the report. So Abdullah ibn Amr says, of course, O Messenger of God, I swear to God I said it. So again, verification, complete, check. He's like, Bi abi anta wa ummi, of course I said it. I swear to God that I said this. And he says, I only intended good. My intention was only good. I didn't have any ill intent. And he says, and I'm strong enough to be able to bear this burden. You know, I have the strength, I have the stamina. So then the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam teaches him the following. He says, إِنَّكَ لَا تَسْتَطِيعُ ذَلِكَ. You're not going to be able to fulfill this. فَلَا تَفْعَلًا. Do not do so. فَإِنَّكَ إِذَا فَعَلْتَ غَارَتْ عَيْنُكَ. He says, if you continue doing this, something is going to go wrong with your eyesight. And basically, if you're not sleeping, it's going to appear on you physically. Basically, you're going to start having issues. غَارَتْ عَيْنُكَ literally means your eye socket would go in. Would go in. And then he says, وَضَعُفَتْ نَفْسُكَ. And then your body would be weak. So you would be physically weak. he says to him now, he transitions. So he goes from addressing him to talking about himself. And he is talking in his role as the messenger of God. He says, وَلَكِنِّي أَنَا أَقُومُ وَأَنَامُ. He's like, as for me, I stand up a portion of the night, and I go to sleep in a portion of the night. وَأَصُومُ وَأُفْطِرُ. And I fast certain days, and I break my fast certain days. فَقُمْ وَنَمْ. Now he gives them instruction. He's like, you should stand up in night vigil and go to sleep. And you should fast, and you can also take a break. فَإِنَّ لِنَفْسِكَ عَلَيْكَ حَقًّا. This is now where the principle of Islam comes in. This is a teaching. He says, number one, your body has rights over you. You know, many people work themselves to death. So, I mean, again, it's easy for us to talk about this and like, oh, nobody does this. Okay. So he was a worship-aholic. Do we not have people who are called workaholics in our community? I know many people. They don't sleep. They're working day and night, 24/7. Trying to provide for the family. They only have good intentions. These are not bad people. They want to make sure we have financial security. We want to make sure that our children are going to have a college fund. We want to make sure that we can donate to good causes. Okay, you're a workaholic. So the messenger is saying right now, your body has rights over you. Next. وَإِنَّ لِعَيْنِكَ عَلَيْكَ حَقًّا. Then he breaks it down to him. He's like, and even your eye has rights over you. So you got to let it rest. If you're awake all the time, your eyes are open. They're working nonstop. Give it a break. وَإِنَّ لِجَسَدِكَ عَلَيْكَ حَقًّا. So the first one, he says nafsik, and nafs could mean different things. But basically, in this context, because he also mentioned the body, then the first nafs would be simply yourself. Yourself has rights over you. Your eyes have rights over you. Your body has rights over you. وَإِنَّ لِزَوْجِكَ عَلَيْكَ حَقًّا. You're married. You're not a bachelor anymore. You can't do what you were doing in bachelor life. And your wife has rights over you. وَإِنَّ لِوَلَدِكَ عَلَيْكَ حَقًّا. And your children have rights over you too. No matter we're talking about, forget work. This guy is engaged in real work, worship of Allah. And the messenger is telling him, remember, you have other obligations. وَإِنَّ لِضَيْفِكَ عَلَيْكَ حَقًّا. Even your visitors have rights over you. وَإِنَّ بِحَسْبِكَ أَن تَصُومَ مِنَ الشَّهْرِ 3 أَيَّامٍ فَإِنَّ الْحَسَنَةَ بِعَشْرِ أَمْثَالِهَا وَذَلِكَ مِثْلُ صِيَامِ الدَّهْرِ. He says it would suffice you to fast 3 days every month, because every good deed is multiplied by 10. And he's like, that means you would have fasted for eternity, for your whole life. Abdullah responds. Now he's talking to the messenger of God. But again, remember, we said people were comfortable enough not to simply say, okay. There was pushback. He says, O messenger of God, allow me to enjoy my youth and my strength. He knows that once I get older, I can't do this. This is very ironic. If you look at our community, when people are young, they're not worshiping Allah. You tell them, when are you going to worship Allah? Let me get old and then I'll worship Allah. Okay, let me tell you what the problem with that is. When you're young, your bones still function. When you get older, you see the older people, where do they do salah usually? On chairs. They desire to put that face down and they can't do it. Right? So the equation is kind of flipped. You're like, do Hajj when you're young. No. When I become a senior citizen, I'll do Hajj. You really want to be with 4 million people? You want to die over there, don't you? Like you're planning a good death. That's not appropriate. That's very difficult. That's challenging. So he says, I can do more than what you gave me. You know, the 3 days you gave me, I can do more than that. So then the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam told him, فَخَمْسًا مِنْ كُلِّ شَهْرٍ. How about you do 5 days a month? So what did he start him off with? 3 days a month. He's like, I can do more. I got strength. I got stamina. It's like 5 days. He's like, oh messenger of God, please allow me to enjoy my youth. I can do better than that. So then the messenger tells him 7. Gives him more. He says, oh messenger of God, I can do better. He says, Sum yawman wa aftir yawmain. Fast 1 day and take a break for 2 days. So every 3 days, fast 1. He says, oh messenger of God, I can do better. He says, فَصُمْ أَفْضَلَ الصِّيَامِ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ صِيَامِ نَبِيِّ اللَّهِ دَاوُودَ فَإِنَّهُ كَانَ أَعْبَدَ النَّاسِ وَهُوَ أَعْدَلُ الصِّيَامِ وَلَا تَزِدْ عَلَيْهِ. He says, if that's the case, then fast the best fast in the sight of God himself. The fasting of the great prophet David, the servant of God, Dawood. he used to be the one who worshipped God more than anyone else. This is very interesting, by the way. Anyone who's got a background in comparative religion and the biblical reports, they speak some very interesting things about David. Of course, they call him King David, and they don't describe him in the best light. We'll say that much. Of course, there is a book dedicated to him called the Psalms of David, but other than that, there is a lot of issues in his personal life that is something that we do not believe in and we don't accept. But here the Prophet is saying he used to be the most devoted to God. وَهُوَ أَعْدَلُ الصِّيَامِ, and it is the most balanced of fasting. He says, and don't do anything more than it. He's like, and how did Dawood used to fast, O Messenger of God? He says, كَانَ يَصُومُ يَوْمًا وَيُفْطِرُ يَوْمًا وَإِنَّهُ كَانَ إِذَا وَعَدَ لَمْ يُخْلِفْ وَإِذَا لَاقَى لَمْ يَفِرْ. He says he used to fast one day and take a break the next day. So fasting every other day. And if he used to promise something, he would carry out his promise. And if he would meet his enemy in the battlefield, he would never turn his back. He says, how can I do this? Meaning the last part. How can I not run away in the middle of the battle if I feel weak or I feel scared? So then the messenger says, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he continues and he says, I can do better than that. So then the messenger says, there is nothing better than that. That's an explicit statement. There is nothing better than that. That's your limit. Again, many people don't understand that when God and his messenger tell you there is a limit to worship, you're not going to go beyond, above and beyond that. That's it. They gave you a restriction. They say you go all the way up to there, but you don't go beyond there. If you trespass, even if it's an act of devotion, it's called trespassing. Right? So you're actually making a mistake. And then the Prophet says, لا صام من صام الأبد لا صام من صام الأبد لا صام من صام الأبد. He's like, whoever fasts for eternity, meaning beyond every other day, then he has not even fasted. Meaning his act of worship would not be accepted. And that's very scary because you're making an offering and your offering is not going to be accepted because it's missing a condition, which is to obey God and to do it on God's terms. Then the messenger of God tells him something else. So far now we've eliminated the issue with fasting. He gave him the minimum and the maximum. Then he tells him, وَقْرَأِ الْقُرْآنَ فِي كُلِّ شَهْرٍ. He's like, recite the Quran once a month. Break the whole Quran once a month. Meaning, when does this take place? This means whenever you're standing up in night vigil, do 1 juz' per night. Do 1/30th of the Quran. He says, O Messenger of God, I can do better than that. So then the messenger says, okay, finish the whole Quran 20 nights. He says, I can do better than that. He says, so do it every 10 nights. He says, O Prophet of God, I can do better than that. He says, read it in every 7 nights and do not do more than that. اقرأه في كل 7 ولا تزد على ذلك. Don't do more. Shouldn't finish the Quran in less than 7 nights. He says, O Messenger of God, please allow me to enjoy myself. I can do better. So then the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam says to him, إِنَّ أَحَبَّ الصِّيَامِ إِلَى اللَّهِ صِيَامُ دَاوُدَ. The most beloved type of fast to God was the fasting of David. وَأَحَبُّ الصَّلَاةِ إِلَى اللَّهِ صَلَاةُ دَاوُدَ. And the most beloved night vigil and devotion to God was that of David. كَانَ يَنَامُ نِصْفَ اللَّيْلِ. He used to sleep half of the night. So remember, the night right now we said is 12 hours. Do the math. Now we're gonna switch from what? From stories to math. Right? We do all types of subjects here. They say a scholar who knows all types of subjects, they call him a polymath. I'm not a polymath, but we're just gonna do some math. When we had British brothers, they don't say math, they say maths. They put an S in the end. Like, what are you talking about? Maths? It's just one math. No, it's maths for them. So he would sleep half of the night, and he would stand in vigil for 1/3 of the night. So what's 1/3 of the night? 4 hours. So half is 6 hours. So he sleeps for what? No, he sleeps 6. Half. Then he stands up in vigil for 1/3, and 1/3 is 4 hours. وَيَنَامُ سُدُسَهُ. And then the last portion of the night is 1/6. How long is that? Right? And then he tells him, وَإِنَّ لِكُلِّ عَمَلٍ شِرَةٍ. He's like, every type of devotion and excitement in faith has a time period of zeal, of energy, of excitement. وَلِكُلِّ شِرَةٍ فَتْرَةٍ. And every single high has a low. Again, remember that. Whenever you're going to go up, you're going to come down. You get a sugar high, what's the aftermath? A sugar low. You got a caffeine high, you're going to have a low. That's how it is in everything in life. Everything that goes up will come down. That's just a law in this world. So now he's saying, when you're excited in worship, you're going to go down eventually. But he says, فَمَنْ كَانَتْ فَتْرَتُهُ إِلَى سُنَّتِي فَقَدْ اهْتَدَى. But if you're down, your low is in accordance with my tradition, then you are guided. So look, you can go beyond my tradition, but make sure that you don't go under it when you come down. Like a lot of people are like, okay, I'm going to stand up at night. Okay, you just stood up at night for 1 night, 2 nights, a week. Fine. And then you just skipped out on salah for the next week. Your low was extremely low, you went underground. You got to maintain a particular equilibrium. You got to be balanced. And that balance has to be the tradition of the messenger. وَمَنْ كَانَتْ فَتْرَتُهُ إِلَى غَيْرِ ذَلِكَ فَقَدْ هَلَكَ. Whoever has a low that is under that, under my tradition and whatever I have legislated, then that person has destroyed themselves. Then he says, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, amazingly, he says, إِنَّكَ لَا تَدْرِي لَعَلَّكَ أَنْ يَطُولُ بِكَ الْعُمُرِ. أَنْ يَطُولَ بِكَ الْعُمُرِ. He's like, you never know. Maybe you're going to live a long life. He took a vow. He'll do this for his whole life. Remember that. It's not like I'm going to take a break. 5 years from now, that's it. I'm gonna graduate from worshiping Allah. I'm gonna do something else. I'll get into a different hobby, right? This was just a phase. A lot of people are like that. They think when you get religious, it's like a phase. Oh, they're just going through a religious phase. No, once you commit to religion, you can't let go of it. If it's truly being done. If it's a phase, that means it was fake, right? So then what ends up happening is Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As, may Allah be pleased with him, he actually ends up living a long life. And he gets to become 90 years of age. And his body was weak. And then after he became old, he would read 1/7 of the Quran to his family. He would read it in the daytime because he cannot do it at night because he's weak. And the point was to eliminate at least 1/7 because he would read the whole Quran. And he says, and if he needed to give himself strength, he would actually break his fast for a few days and then count those days that he missed, and then he would make them up later on because he wanted to make sure that whatever the messenger of God left me with, I at least maintain that. And then he would mention this particular narration, which is to show vulnerability. He's making this a learning experience, even if it's his own self that's basically under the microscope here. He's telling people, شَدَدْتُ فَشُدِّدَ عَلَيْهِ. I was tough on myself and I made things difficult on myself. And he's like, and I became exactly what the messenger of God said. I'm old in age now. And he says, I wish I took the concession that was given to me by the messenger of God. That would have been more beloved for me than my family, my wealth. And he's like, now I'm an old man. I've gotten very weak, and I would hate to leave off what the messenger of God sallallahu alaihi wasallam commanded me to do. So some lessons. Hopefully we can cover these lessons before time for Isha. So it says, after we read this report, let's look at some of the morals and the lessons, because there is a whole bunch of lessons that could be extracted out of this. Number one, he says, this is yet another occasion where we see how close-knit the Prophet and his community were. They were extremely close to one another, and how involved he was in their personal lives. This is amazing. Right now, we're not even involved in our own family's lives, let alone community's lives. And even the ones who know better, like sometimes, again, you can preach and you can say you should spend time with your family, but the way our lives are limit us from doing that. So even the people that know, I need to spend time with my children, they don't get to spend time with their children, let alone other people. But the messenger of God, with all of his responsibilities as a family man, he was also a statesman. And well, not a politician, by the way, because those people are liars. But he was a true public servant. And he was with his people. And he cared about them in this life, and he cared about their salvation in the next life. So Amr ibn al-As, although he's the father, he goes immediately to the messenger of God, and he knows, look, he's going to handle this. Because I talked to my son, and my son did not listen to me. Of course, now some people think this is like the imam. They got problems with their children, and they're like, come talk to the imam.
Well, we're not like the messenger of God. One reason is because I come once a week. So I don't know what stuff goes down here during the week. And then you come and you tell me, here, talk to my family. Well, I need to be more acquainted. I need to have background. I need to sit down and learn before I start opening my mouth. But again, many parents think this imam is like a miracle worker. As soon as the children see the imam, they're just going to be angels all of a sudden. It doesn't work like that, right? The human way, the way Allah created us, is that we need to get to know one another, knowing one another, then trusting one another, then loving one another, then doing what we want of each other. But it comes from knowledge first and foremost, right? So if I don't know someone, I have no right to tell them to, like, oh, listen to your parents. I don't know. Like, I'm not listening to my parents. Why should I command somebody else to do that? It's a challenge for all of us. We're all tested by our parents. And our parents are tested by us. That's just the nature of life, right? But here the messenger of God was actually truly within the community. And that's what true leadership is when you're involved. Your relationship with people, and again, that's why they say there's a difference between a leader and a manager. The manager, he just wants the projects to be done at work. A leader is actually connected with you and your family. He visits you in your house, you visit him in his house. He cares about your children, you care about his children. It's a close-knit relationship, even if there's no family connection, right? And the messenger of God was the best of leaders, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So although this was a personal ordeal between a man and his son, he still went to the messenger of God, and he noticed that the messenger of God immediately did what? He didn't just say, yeah, sure, I'll make a note of it. He immediately went to work. Meaning he took it upon himself and he's like, this is my responsibility. I'm going to fulfill this request. And he goes to the man's house, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in order for him to fix that problem. Now there is something interesting here. Remember how I said Abdullah ibn Amr was a scholar? So the messenger of God clearly felt that this guy did not really learn this from me, so I have to address it. Because that happens a lot of times, And this is clear. Sometimes a teacher may be teaching and then the students do their own thing. So you get upset with the teacher, but it's not the teacher's fault. Because sometimes the students, they don't actually process the information the teacher is saying. So now you can't blame the teacher. Check in with the teacher and the teacher's like, I never taught that. I never said that. That happens to me in class all the time. I say, repeat what I said. And they say something that I totally did not say, right? So I got to address that. And now it becomes worse when they start acting on that. Because I don't approve of that message. I don't legitimize it or rationalize it. So this again tells us how close the Prophet was to his community, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And one of the things that we extract from this is that he interacted with their daily problems. He was there. He was involved and he was present. So this is the lesson here, is to be present in the life of those that are around you. 2, the messenger of God he didn't feel sufficient that he simply heard from the father what the complaint was. Because many of us, that's what we do. We hear the complaint, so a wife complains about her husband. All right, we're going to take him to court right now. Call the cops on him. You come to find out, they just had a disagreement about who's going to take the trash out. And then it's on the news that it's like some domestic abuse case. There is domestic abuse, don't get me wrong. But again, you got to sit with all parties involved. It's like, when did you guys fight? Last week. Where were you? I was in China. How could there be physical abuse when you were in China? Through the internet? Like you sent a physically abusive email? Verbal abuse, yes. Psychological abuse, true. But again, we have to be careful before we just run with reports. So the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not give the father any response. He goes to the son and he starts verifying what is the reality behind this complaint. And also, I want to know what is behind this. What's the background to this? And then once he heard the verification, he recognized what drove him to do this. Did this man, did he really want to abuse his wife by not having relations with her? Because that's abuse, by the way. That's a very big type of abuse with spouses, where they actually stop having intimacy. That's how they get back at their spouse. They're like, oh, you don't want to do this? Okay, I'll show you. And basically they just cut off relations. And most people don't recognize this, but this is what women do. Because again, it's like, okay, you don't want to do this? See you in the bed. Never. And they check out. So that's actually a type of abuse, but most people don't think about that. Of course, what we know of is the aftermath of that when the guy goes crazy. What drove him crazy? Well, you guys know the story. So the Prophet recognized that what drove him to do that was not to abuse his wife and to control her. Rather, he says, I have the strength to carry on with this. Whatever I had before I got married, I'm going to maintain whatever I had. I'm not going to change that. So then the Prophet ﷺ starts giving him directives and gives him instruction. And then you recognize also that the Prophet was eliminating or actually dissolving the main point that Abdullah ibn Amr had, which is that I have the ability and the strength to continue with this. And the Messenger of God was telling him, you actually don't. You think you do. And again, this is so common. Young people, they think they can do a lot of things. And all of a sudden, as soon as they get married, for some reason, it's like reality hits. It's like a slap in the face, right? So that happens quite a bit. And that's why they tell you, again, with young people, it's okay, listen to them, respect them. But get them to do something in life. Give them some responsibility. Get them married. You know, a lot of people who are like into social justice and stuff, just get them married. See how much they're going to be in social justice. They can't even get their home together. That's a reality because it's a huge responsibility. But when you got all the time in the world to spend time online and to comment about every single thing, no strings attached, right? So then the Prophet ﷺ tells him, you are not going to be able to do that. So he eliminates the biggest proof that Abdullah has. And then he tells him, look, you're going to have a negative consequence by continuing with this behavior. Your eyes are going to be bad. Your body is going to go wrong. And then he tells him, look at my example. Remember, I am your role model. I am the messenger of God. I sleep and I wake up. I fast and I take a break. So he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is the one that instructed us to fast and to stand up in night vigil. And yet he used to do it in a balanced fashion, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the point here is that we should do it based on his tradition. And then he also tells him that you're going to have other problems in life, not just physical problems, but you're going to have a problem with your wife. That's a domestic issue. You're going to have a problem with your guests, with your children, with your family. You're going to have problems all around just because you want to do what's in your head and you want to be stubborn. So now the point here is that although these sentences were brief and short and to the point, they actually went all around and basically got rid of the statement or the justification that Abdullah had. So the Prophet was fixing his concepts. Again, many of us, the reason we have problems is because our concepts are wrong. We don't know who God is, so we reject God. Because we think, for example, if we're going through difficulty, God hates me. Well, I hate God again. Right? Right back at him. Because we don't actually know who God is. We have wrong concepts. So a lot of it has to be with rewiring, reprogramming. We actually have to get brainwashed. So we have to wash our minds of filth that may have contaminated our minds and then put positive information, you know, positive reinforcement. Number 3, it says the Prophet here is teaching us the importance of balance in every single thing in life. Balance is something that cannot be overemphasized. Every single thing has a right upon you in your life. Your body, your eyes, your wife, your spouse, your children, your guests. Anyone that you interact with has rights over you. And the Prophet ﷺ here gave us all the different aspects of a typical life. And he says you have to be balanced in all of them. You can't give one thing extra emphasis. Everything has to have its balance. And the Prophet was warning us from being extreme in any one of these different aspects of life. Number 4, this actually teaches us a prophecy of the Prophet, as in something, a gift of his and a miracle. Because although this took place during the life of the Prophet ﷺ, Abdullah ibn Amr at this time was 30 years of age when this conversation took place. And the Prophet says, you're going to live long. Be aware. 60 years later, reality hit when the guy turned 90 years of age, right? So 60 years later, and this tells us again that the Prophet ﷺ, whenever he says something, he's not speaking from his own desires. It's a prophecy from God. It's knowledge that God has given him. Number 5, how important religious observance was in the life of that original community. Religious observance was something extremely important for them. Islam was not simply an identity. They didn't play with identity politics. They actually committed themselves and they observed faith. They had a contract with God and they decided to follow up with action. So Abdullah ibn Amr here, he was telling the messenger, look, I am committed to this project called Islam, and I want you to allow me to enjoy that. And basically, even the messenger, the thing he gave him is fast one day and take a break the next day and finish the Quran at night once every week, right? And that, again, is during his youth, when he's strong and he has the ability to do so. And then he lived for all that life, and he still maintained that. He says, I don't wish to stop something that the messenger of God gave me. Like, I made a deal with the messenger of God, and I don't wish to leave it off. And by the way, this is called what? This is voluntary actions. This is not the 5 daily salah. Again, and this is a follow-up to last week's program. Remember the man who says, I'm not going to do anything extra? But this is how the early community was. So we're talking about voluntary actions. Forget Ramadan is already done with. 5 daily salahs done with. This is all extra. Nobody says it's an obligation to stand up at night, to finish the Quran once a week, to fast one day and to break it the next. This is completely voluntary. But these people were completely committed to their purpose of existence. May Allah be pleased with them. So he did not want to wish to break something that he made a promise to the messenger of God with. And this tells us how disciplined they were, how committed they were. May Allah be pleased with them. And again, we're saying that commitment was in voluntary actions. So how was their commitment with the obligations? Number 6, you notice Amr ibn al-As, may Allah be pleased with him. And this is an older man at this time. And you recognize his wisdom here. And he's known, by the way, to be extremely wise. He was a politician. This is what he's known as. He was a diplomat. Whenever people had issues, this is the guy that would go back to, even before he became Muslim. And although he had a difference of opinion with his son, he didn't refrain from visiting his son. Many of us, we have problems with our family members. Okay, I won't talk to you again. I'm not going to be your dad anymore. I'm going to disown you. You don't get to do that. Even if they have differences of opinion with you, you still have to maintain a relationship. And the wiser person is the one that extends themselves. The one who cuts off ties, there is something there. But now, is there a place for severing ties? Yes, there is. We said this before. If there is some type of abuse, you sever ties. If there is some type of, you're still in the healing process from some type of trauma that has not been resolved, you don't need to connect with people like that. But we're looking at it here from this perspective of this man being wise and having much life experience, yet he still continued to visit his son and checking up on his affairs. And he didn't think, you know what, once my son becomes 30, he can do his own thing. In Islam, a parent is a parent until the child dies. You don't get to stop being a parent. That's a completely false concept where they're 18, hit the road, find yourselves. Get your own life together. No. If you brought someone into this life, you're supposed to continue to help them out. This doesn't mean now they are dependent on you. This is the problem we have. Many of our community members, he's still 42 years old, he's still living at home, and he's not responsible. That's a problem. But now if they're teaching the responsibility, no problem with living at home. But you're actually pitching in because now your father has retired, you're paying the bills, you're supporting the family. So I don't want to like disrespect people who still live at home. There's nothing wrong with that as long as there is responsibility. But if somebody is in their 40s, they're still not married, they're playing video games all day, they don't have a job, and they're basically freeloading off of their parents, we didn't teach them independence. That's the issue here, right? So here he actually went and checked up on him in his domestic life, and through his life experience and wisdom, he tried to, advise his son and give him counsel. But at the same time, he recognized, man, there's going to be some type of imbalance here. Imbalances cause dysfunctionality. This is a rule. Any type of imbalance will cause you dysfunction. And that's what the Prophet was telling him. Don't be imbalanced, be balanced. If you are imbalanced, you're going to have dysfunction in health, dysfunction in relationships, dysfunction in life. Be balanced, function will be proper. So again, how did he do this? His son is preoccupied with worship. He asked the wife, Sometimes you're not going to get a direct answer from the individual themselves. And look at this woman. She is very confident, by the way. She's a very strong personality. And she basically says, although it's something very personal and women typically don't like to share things that happen in the privacy of their bedroom, but she felt, you know what, this is a reason to share. There is a reason to share this because there's something wrong here in this equation. And my man is a good man, but he's simply not doing things right. So that's why she didn't complain about him. She's like, he's not a terrible man. She's like, he's a great man, but he's not a husband. So I married a husband. I didn't marry a great man. There is something beyond that in marriage. So again, she actually mentioned the dysfunctionality in the intimate part of life. She didn't get into details. And that's the key, by the way. In Islam, we're taught to have modesty, that we don't share details. But if there are issues, we need to go and resolve issues, even if they happen to be issues of intimacy. And many domestic problems, by the way, stem from intimacy going off balance. That's a reality. So there's nothing wrong with us actually going to counselors and therapists to get that stuff fixed. Just talking about it. Sometimes it could be a bad experience in the past, some type of trauma from childhood that was never resolved. Why should your spouse suffer for a lifetime because you haven't resolved your issues? That's not fair. You don't want to have a relationship with them. Let them go. Let them have a relationship with somebody else. Again, we said it's not a prison sentence. It's supposed to be a loving relationship based on compassion and mercy. So she was very creative in how she disclosed this information, and she actually started praising and complimenting her husband. That's the key, is how do you speak about the problem? You know, some people speak about the problem and they're complaining before you even start asking them the question. They go out of their way to complain. But she started saying, what a great man he is. My husband is so great. He never goes to sleep at night. And he doesn't break his fast. And he has never seen me yet. You know, he's just checked out from this relationship. But she said it again in a very nice, kind, and polite way. So this tells us that she was a very intelligent woman. She's very smart. She's very wise. And she recognized her religious rights. That's so key. And many of us, unfortunately, don't know what our rights are. So that's a big reason for abuse. You go into a relationship, and I know many sisters. And I'm like, why are you in this relationship? She's like, because I was told divorce is bad. Allah hates divorce. I'm like, who told you that? He revealed a whole chapter in the Quran called At-Talaq. Right? There is a way out. It's a contract. If things don't work out between partners, what do? I'm doing business with you, brother, and then I start cheating. What are you going to do? That's it. And I don't have to hate your guts. We can just terminate the contract, and everybody goes their own way. But most of us don't know what our rights are, so we go into a relationship, we're like, okay, here we go. We're stuck in this thing, you know, because you don't know the whole story walking into the relationship. May Allah guide us to know our rights and also to recognize our responsibilities as well. And this teaches us again that the father was extremely careful in choosing that woman. He didn't choose a woman who didn't know. He chose a woman who actually was very well acquainted with her rights and with her responsibilities. Alhamdulillah, we finished in time. This way we don't get into any problems and any misunderstandings. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdik ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Allah is far above any imperfection. We testify that He is the only one deserving of worship. We seek His forgiveness and we repent to Him. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sallam. We ask you, Allah, to bless the Messenger Muhammad, to bless his family and his righteous followers, to elevate his mention and rank, and to shower him with protection and grace, and to make us from his righteous followers. Ameen. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. We praise Allah, the Lord of everything in existence. Just a quick announcement. Next week I will not be in town, so we'll take a break next week, inshallah, and then we will meet each other in the last week of the month of November, if Allah gives us the chance to do so. May Allah reward you all and accept from you.